Hello, my name is Manny Kagan. I'm a mortgage broker and president of Pacific Bay Financial, which started together with my wife in 1985. I also started a few months ago Money Solutions Academy, and I have a special guest today, Gregory Rutchik, who is a business lawyer. We know each other for many years. It's funny how it is. Just thinking how many years we know each other. But it doesn't matter because Gregory is specializing in in his transactions with LLCs for real estate purchases, basically. And in my world, it often happens when people buy commercial, especially commercial or income-producing properties, they take a title in LLC. And the question which I often have, can lender accept it? And many of them do. Not only that, certain transactions like fix and flip, they do require you to take a title in LLCs. So, Gregory, tell us what it is. What's LLC?
Manny, it's really a blessing to be with you today.
Oh, thank you.
And an LLC is just a business entity under state law, and California and other states recognize this business entity, and it is a way of holding both an asset, managing assets, and directing how money, revenue, and losses go to the owners, or in the LLC words, they use members.
All right. So now we're talking about LLC stands Limited Liability Corporation, which
Correct.
means that it limits liability of owners of the property. To what extent? Why would, owners would like to have it in Limited Liability Corporation?
I think this is a very important question. So let's just say individual Manny has multiple assets. They have their personal home, and now they are looking maybe to invest in an income-producing property. In order to protect their personal home, they're going to basically do business not as their individual. They're going to do business and purchase this income property in an entity called a limited liability company in an attempt to separate their personal assets from this, let's call it, business asset. It's very important, though, that Manny, the person we're using in our story, understands how the limitations work and when they may not work. And let me just tell the audience the bad news first.
Okay, before you give bad news, I want to give good news.
Okay.
I always start with good news.
Well, the good news is that a limited liability corporation or limited liability company, and I use those words interchangeably, that entity is going to own title to this income producing property. And everything that the owner, the member, does related to that income producing property is going to let other people know that that is how the title is held, contracts are entered, vendors are paid for. And it's very important that the member, the owner of the limited liability company, has a separate bank account. They're going to be required to have a separate tax ID number. They're going to want to potentially consider having a separate email address so that the public only thinks of that income producing property as the LLC. Separating the asset.
I will interrupt you because I want to understand. This is kind of insurance, protects owners from somebody suing them because it's not them, they don't own this property. If you buy this on your own name, anyone can go after you. But if it's a corporation, they have to go after a corporation and only follow the assets of the corporation, correct?
Well, here's the honest news, if you don't want me to use the word bad news.
Good.
One can always be sued. If Manny buys the title in the property in the name of the LLC, Manny, the individual, can still be sued. The important thing is that it is more likely than not, if Manny has kept the money separate and only dealt with the public through the limited liability company, that a third party will have a hard time going after Manny's personal assets. So to recap, a limited liability company is a very important way to separate business assets from personal assets, whether it's a real estate investment or it's a business. But it is not insurance, and it is not guaranteed that you will not be sued. You want to have insurance in case somebody hurts themselves in that property. And we can use examples. For example, if someone hurts themselves in the property, or if there's a default in a business transaction in the LLC, it will be very hard for a third party related to the LLC to successfully sue Manny the individual if Manny has done a good job of keeping his personal money separate from the LLC's business.
I think it's very valid advice. I never hear it this way because, you know, people open LLC, but what's next? But you put it very clearly that it's basically, it protects you to extent, but not 100%, because it doesn't mean
Correct.
that, yeah, okay.
Correct. Now, let's make, I apologize for interrupting, but I was going to make our example a little bit more interesting. In this particular example, Manny is going to partner with his friend Rick in buying this income-producing property. Now, I want to just point out that I could have said Manny and his wife are going to partner. And that is an example that often comes up, that husband and wife would hold title to the income-producing property in the LLC. And that is not a bad example. But I want to use a non-spouse as the partner in this example to point out that the other benefit of the LLC is that Manny and Rick are in a partnership, but it's called a limited liability company. And together, they will use an operating agreement, a contract, to allocate profits and losses. Now, they can decide if, for example, in this example, Manny is going to actively manage the real estate property and maybe even take a fee for managing it. And Rick is going to be just a passive investor in the LLC. A couple of things to be mindful of. Manny, if Manny takes a salary as an active member, he may be subject to a self-employment tax of 15.4%. Whereas Rick is not taking a salary. Rick is only going to get distribution of net income. There is no self-employment tax to Rick, but the tax component and the flow of profit and loss will be allocated in a contract called the operating agreement. And this is a very important document for some other reasons as well, which I'd like to go into.
All right. So what I'm hearing, and just for simple explanation, if you want to buy income-producing property and you want to protect your assets from whoever it is, it's better to create LLCs than just partnership, because partnership doesn't provide same protection. Am I correct?
100%. A partnership, correct. A partnership is a business entity that exists in two ways. It can be the title holder. It can also have an agreement. But a partnership has much less protection than a separate entity like a limited liability company.
Okay. One of the questions which comes up in a lending is that some companies do not allow you to take title in LLCs. You have to have individual, whatever form other available. Can this be transferred into LLC after the property is acquired in different form?
This is a really important question to get the answer right on. It depends. Let's go through it. Manny and Rick purchased the income property in their own names because the lender will not allow initially the property to be in an entity. Two things we have to be mindful of, and one of them is not the loan. We don't want the property reassessed down the road because we've changed title. In the assessment context, so long as the owners remain the same, there's no reassessment. That's something we really have to be mindful of. But let's jump over to the loan for a second. The lender has got to consent to the transfer of title to this entity. If they don't consent, the loan agreement could accelerate, and we don't want that to happen if we want to keep our mortgage.
So in other words, what you're saying is a very important point, because we have specific lenders and specific programs which do allow LLCs. And at the same time, if you want conventional loan, you cannot get an LLC. Even trust sometimes is not allowed. So you bring up those points which people have to be aware of. And I didn't realize this even before our call. I think that anyone who wants to buy income-producing property needs to consult an attorney. And Gregory is one of those attorneys who knows what he's talking about. So it sounds to me.
I appreciate that. Let's just go into the living trust for a moment, because a living trust is not a business entity, but it is a title holder of assets. And if husband and wife buy property in living trust and get mortgage, and they want to transfer title to an LLC because now they have multiple properties and they want to maybe have third party participate, the two issues remain. We want to make sure the lender does not accelerate the loan and will allow the change of title to essentially the same owners. There should be no objection. But the second issue is very important. We don't want a reassessment if down the road the real property is worth more.
Yes.
If you change title and you do not get an exemption because the property would be reassessed, you could pay more property tax. So make sure you focused on the lender and the exemption for changing title essentially to the same owners.
What I hear is treat these transactions as a business, because often people make investments, they buy properties, they hear advice, but they don't know what they're actually doing. And when you treat it as a business, you better learn how business can operate. And I will stop here because there's 100%. So much more to learn. And I would like you to continue. We will continue this conversation. And Gregory is a very good person to get in touch with and get answers. So my name is Manny Kagan. I promise to help you. And no, we're not sitting in one room. It's just magic of Zoom arrangements where we can, well, the background is the same, but we're talking in separate locations. I will put in the bottom Gregory's phone number so you to reach him or reach me if you have any questions when it comes to LLCs or any other matters related to business-related transactions. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Bye-bye.